Welcome to the program today. Mondo Gonzalez here in studio, but I have through Skype Lieutenant Colonel Bob Maginnis, certainly an expert on all things Middle East and Near East, geopolitically wise. And so we're going to have a conversation with him today about a new book that he has out. But before we do, I want to remind everybody about a couple things that are going on here in March 2023 for Prophecy Watchers. We're going to be going to Israel, and we are inviting all of you to come along and join us, a 10-day trip. And we also have a 3-day extension into the country of Jordan, where we're going to see Petra and Mount Nebo. Spring is my favorite time of the year to be there in Israel. Very, very cool temperatures. Things are still green. Flowers are out. And so if you want more information on that, you can go to visitisraeltoday.com and just join us. So, Bob, welcome.
Well, thank you, Mondo. It's my pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, this is such a great opportunity to chat with you. As most people know, there's a lot of things going on in the world that are extremely challenging. And as Christians, you know, we want to be informed, especially as we seek to share God's truth with our, friends and family, neighbors, and everything else. And you have a new book out called Kings of the East. So, if you will, kind of share a little bit about the book. I know you've been working on it for a while. Kind of give us a little bit of background how it came to be.
Well, Kings of the East is really a long-term project. I've written in the past about China years ago. And, China today is a very, very different proposition than it was, a decade or two ago. It's the world's hegemon. It's the world's, coming mighty power that challenges the U.S. on every single front. Arguably has the largest economy in the world, certainly the largest military. And what a lot of Americans don't appreciate is the history. And so to understand this world power that seeks to destroy America and become dominant across this globe, I think it's important that a lot of factors be considered, to include the history, to include their culture, and to include especially the 95 million members of the Chinese Communist Party and what they intend to do not only today, but in the coming generations.
It's amazing reading your book because you provide a great history there in many different sections. But one of the things that I think is overarching is, even the title itself, Kings of the East, comes straight out of the book of Revelation. And so I think for our viewers who are looking at end time prophecy, I always try to remind them that, we can read the book of Revelation in a matter of maybe, an hour or so if you wanted. But so we see these portraits of the end time events, and oftentimes we just think it's just going to appear. But we know that it takes time, and there's a lot of things building up, stage setting, so to speak. And so when we see in the book of Revelation that the kings of the East are crossing the Euphrates River in Revelation 16, coming to join this final battle of Armageddon, these guys are... They're so powerful that here we have in Revelation 13 that the Antichrist has pretty much world domination, but yet he's worried about this other source of interference. So we'll get to that in the end, but I think oftentimes, let's talk a little bit about how Americans, or at least us, we fail to maybe see the history of China and all that it's doing today, because I think, China's economic. Aren't they capitalistic? I mean, how do we misunderstand some of this?
Yeah, there's a lot of mythology associated with Americans who want to think the best of China. They think of Richard Nixon in '72, at the advice of Henry Kissinger, went over there in February of that year, met with Mao Zedong, and of course, welcomed China into the New World Order. Well, China has never been satisfied with the New World Order, and especially President Xi today has every intention of revamping it, along with his cadre of friends like Vladimir Putin and those in North Korea, Iran, etc. You made me think of Pax Romana, but also Pax Seneca, which is, of course, during the Ming Dynasty, there was a peace throughout Asia, and it was attributed to the prowess of the Chinese at the time. Well, I would argue that what is envisioned based upon the speeches of President Xi, Chairman Xi, and his minions, that they intend to dominate the world. Biblically, I think you have to look behind and interpret some of the scriptures as to whether or not in Revelation 16 or 9 that it really is a major force coming from the east that crosses the Euphrates and enters the battle of Armageddon, the battle between good and evil. And I do believe, after looking at this, and I go into this in Kings of the East, that there's good reason to believe that China is indeed an end times player, whether it's the 200 million that might be cyborgs or human beings or robots. China's involved in doing all that and much more. So we as Americans, who tend to be rather naive when it comes to history, tend to have all sorts of mythology in our minds about present day China. China is totalitarian. It's Marxist-Leninist. It's very oppressive, and it's not capitalistic except for certain areas in which, under the current regime, they intend to replace with government-run manufacturing, government-run industry. These things are changing. They almost crumbled during the 90s as the explosion of economic prosperity in China happened, but now they have a true ideologue in the name of President Xi that is bringing things back to a very different future.
I think Americans, we have such a different history for the last couple, 250 years than China does. And I think for the most part, Americans, for the most part, at least our history has been very good-natured, well-intentioned. I mean, we're still sinners, no doubt. But if we were to look at China today, or at least I could, and say, well, aren't they content, in being part of maybe a bipolar world or a tripolar world, just sharing, we say hegemony, but are they content at just being part of the team, being part of the world system, the Security Council, or what do they really want?
Yeah, you have to consider that the Chinese voice today is that of the Chinese Communist Party, the 95 million, head, with the head being Chairman Xi. They have made it very clear as to what they want. They don't want the world order that was foisted upon them and the rest of the world at the end of World War II. Certainly, Pax Americana. They don't want that. They don't want all these international organizations. They want the Middle Kingdom to rise again. They want to, run things. Many historians have looked at China today and yesterday and have certainly concluded that the future of China, if it gets its will, and it certainly has the means to impose that will cause the world to revamp all the institutions that it has and make them far more totalitarian, and also to change the kind of the focus of people. They won't have the civil liberties we enjoy in the United States, where we can worship the God that we choose. No, the God of the totalitarian, the Marxists, of course, is big government, and there's a cult in China all about President Xi. I expect that later this month, when President Xi gets his third term, he will basically be crowned as president and chairman for life. And then the cult of Xi will be very similar to the cult of Mao, years ago. And Mao, of course, dictated everything, and he was also the butcher of arguably more than 100 million of his own countrymen. So we need to recognize that it's past time to identify China not only as a rising power, but as a threat to our own civil liberties, certainly our religious liberties in this country, and they will impose that draconian approach on everyone in this world given their opportunity.
Well, we're going to take a little break here, but after we do, because there's so many things in your book which are tremendous, and I want to bring up a couple of those. So we're going to take a little break here where people can find out how to get our magazine, our magazine the goal is to keep you updated and informed each month, and so take a listen.
Every day, the ancient prophecies of the Bible get more and more exciting as we watch world events come into perfect alignment with the words of the ancient prophets. Examine the pre-trib rapture doctrine taught by the Apostle Paul. Come to a deeper understanding of the giants of Genesis 6 and the real reason for the flood of Noah. Read the shocking things we see coming out of the world of science and technology, mind-blowing advances in transhumanism and artificial intelligence. Keep a close eye for a series of wars coming very soon to the Middle East. The Bible's a supernatural book, and we enjoy covering the fringe subjects and dark corners of Scripture as well. UFOs, the Nephilim, the miracles of the Bible, and so much more. It's a one-of-a-kind publication full of articles that will make you a Bible prophecy expert and prepare you for the future. We have a very special subscription offer for you today. For your gift of $50 or more to support the worldwide outreach of Prophecy Watchers, you can subscribe to either the digital version or the print version of our magazine. And here's the best part. In addition to receiving 12 monthly issues of the magazine, this offer comes with a fantastic bonus: 8 DVDs from some of the leading prophecy experts in the world today. 8 DVDs plus 12 issues of the magazine represents a $200 value, but it's available today for your gift of just $50 or more to support the work of Prophecy Watchers. This offer is available anywhere in the USA and will ship both the magazine and the DVDs absolutely free. Don't wait or hesitate. Call the toll-free number on your screen or visit our online bookstore at prophecywatchers.tv to take advantage of this limited time offer. Looking at the future through the lens of Bible prophecy is the entire focus of this ministry. We're motivated like never before by our desire to tell the world that Jesus is the only answer for these troubling times. And we do believe that He's coming back very soon, just as He promised. Partner with us today. Help us take God's message of salvation through Jesus Christ to the whole world.
Well, Bob, before the break, we were kind of talking just about the nature of maybe some of the American ideals, or maybe some of the naive thinking, myself included. Your book was very helpful in helping me to understand the history and shaping where we're at today. Let me ask you this question. You're involved in the government. When we look at our current government, I'm not even the political party necessarily, but just overall, do you think that our current government truly is capable or competent or understands the role of the Chinese threat?
Well, they may understand it, but they're totally compromised, in my opinion. You have what's called elite capture, in which senior businessmen and politicians are beholding to the communist Chinese because of economic leverage or political leverage, or we have the cyber warriors, an entire army in China that is constantly trying to compromise our secrets in this country, whether they be government secrets or industrial secrets. The Chinese, according to Mao and all the way to the present, have been engaged in a war against the United States and a war against the West. Their objective, of course, is total compromise of our system and the replacement with their system. And they're willing to do just about anything. And that it goes from the academic to the media to our government to even buying up farmland around this country to feed their people, because they have only about a quarter of the usable farmland that we do, and therefore they try to import and export to feed their population and then to give them the power they need around the world. So China is an aggressive adversary. It no longer adheres to what a former leader, Deng, he said in the past, and I'm quoting here, it should hide its strength, bide its time, and never take the lead. Well, that idea, that concept has been thrown out the window by the current people. Under the leadership of President Xi and under the guidance of Wang Wu-ning, who is the Kissinger of China, they believe in big government, they believe in totalitarianism, they believe in opposing openness. They believe in Marxism. They believe in a host of things, none of which are going to grant civil liberties to people like us, much less our religious liberties. So we need to recognize that we're in a war, whether we want to fight it or not. They are at war with us, and we, at this point, arguably are losing.
I think it's appropriate for our audience to understand that, and I think many of them might not, is that China absolutely is an adversary, and it becoming, as you mentioned, I've watched over the last 30 years, again, that what you just described so perfectly is that they seemed very passive a little bit, but now they're openly aggressive and antagonistic in so many ways. Talk a little bit, if you will, just economically, how they are able to manipulate, again, the leadership of the country, the businesses, because all of our businesses, oftentimes they're operating by profit. That's understandable. But to have access to the 1.4 billion people or whatever that are in China, a market. So how often are they operating, the businesses operating with morality or just simply profitability? And how does China interact with that?
Well, it's all about profit that goes to the Chinese, not about whether or not we are going to make a profit. They're very aggressive. I mean, certainly diplomatically, they use what's called a wolf warrior diplomacy, and we saw that early in the Biden administration, where we were taken to the woodshed. But economically, they bring companies over to China to collaborate with, and if you want to operate in China, you have to basically give them all your intellectual power, intellectual property, and then of course you have to collaborate and cooperate totally with the Chinese, which is interesting, given our effort to bring light to these types of practices. A lot of Chinese companies have now withdrawn themselves from the New York Stock Exchange and other exchanges because of the scrutiny that we insist that all companies go under if in fact they want to be openly traded. And the Chinese are just pulling out all stops and retreating on those fronts. Economically, they want to replace the dollar with the RMB, their currency. They want that to be the world reserve currency. And of course, that would have a devastating impact on our economy as well as other Western economies. On many fronts, they are suffering though. Certainly they have a real estate crisis right now. They have an employment crisis. They have a productivity crisis. They have a debt crisis. And these are issues that are very upfront to President Xi and will be considered, at the 20th Party Congress later this month. Those, however, are not so serious as to diminish his chances to become president and chairman for life, which I expect will happen. So there are a lot of issues that are twirling around here. But Americans, if you're serious about understanding world events, if you're serious about trying to put all this in perspective, really need to begin to dig deep, understand who the Chinese are historically, and understand who these Marxist-Leninists are. They believe in what they're saying, and it's not good for us.
It's interesting as we look and watch, we read in the Bible about the kings of the East. And so to me, it's fascinating to watch prophecy being fulfilled in the sense of the building up and the background that's setting up for this stage. Again, not surprised that prophecy would be fulfilled. One of the best sections that you had in the book, which I really appreciated because I've done some reading myself on just the technology of China and some of the digitization and the cashless societies and the things that they're already doing there. But you brought up in the book that they have been ranked so many times with more than the United States as for invention patents. I was like, oh, that's a great little piece of information that we often think, oh, America's the lead, but yet that's not necessarily the case.
They're very aggressive on especially technology. I think that there's an entire book that could be developed on this whole topic, Mondo. Artificial intelligence, which is of course being used against us today. If you check out to buy anything on the internet these days, it will pop in front of you if you didn't make the purchase, and they'll try to run you to ground until you make those purchases. That's artificial intelligence. It's driving surveillance systems around the world. The Chinese are surveilling all their population. They would surveil us in every capability possible, and they're doing a rather good job. Even manipulation of votes, which is a different issue perhaps, but related. On weaponry, hypersonics, all the 5th generation, 6th generation, they're in outer space in a big way. They intend to land on the moon and basically claim the moon for the People's Republic of China. They are developing all sorts of products for their general population, and of course, they control much of the computing systems development in the world. What they can't create through incentives and the fusion of military and civilian sectors and academic sectors, they'll steal. And this is part of government policy, and they're being very aggressive about it, and they're making great headway. Meanwhile, of course, we here in the West, certainly believe that we have every right to compete, but the Chinese are undermining us in so many ways, and so we need to be as wise as we possibly can, as discerning as we can, understand the adversary who is out there to take us capture and to kill us in many cases, and to do so will require a lot of effort. And unfortunately, I don't think our political leaders, much less some of our academic leaders, are paying sufficient time and effort to demonstrating how dangerous this is.
I've read a lot of books in 30 years on prophecy, and this book, this is my nonprofit prediction, but this book is going to become, I think, a classic on understanding the kings of the East, because you approach it from a biblical perspective. You engage with all the linguistics and the background of what the Bible does and doesn't say or could say about China. You engage it from a theological perspective. I think people are going to want this book as it relates to understanding the kings of the East from a prophetic perspective. But it's so much more than that, because you bring the entire history up to from the past all the way to the future as it relates to the book of Revelation. So we're going to take a little break here where you can see how you can get this book. Again, you will want this book in your library and looking to understand the prophetic implications of the nation of China and the kings of the East. So take a listen.
It has become pretty clear to anyone with eyes to see and ears to hear that China is out to eliminate the Western world and impose their communist ideals on the entire planet. Is there time to reverse their aggressive advance to rid the world of freedom and democracy? Bob Maginnis' new book, Kings of the East, provides a detailed overview of China's history and the tools they intend to use to gain control of the world. You can avail yourself of this must-read book by calling the 800 number you see on your screen, or you can find it in our online bookstore at prophecywatchers.tv. Bob has also written 2 excellent books that should be required reading for every American: Alliance of Evil and Give Me Liberty, Not Marxism. These 2 books have flown under the radar, but suddenly, based on what we see happening today, appear to be highly prophetic. We've packaged up all 3 of these insightful books into what we're calling the Kings of the East package, and are making them available for your gift of $60 or more to support the work of Prophecy Watchers. We also want to continue bringing you the experts and taking our television programs and important interviews to the whole world. We've added a very special free bonus to this collection. Bob has been a frequent guest at our prophecy conferences, and we're going to send you 2 of his best hour-long messages detailing these very same topics for free when you order the Kings of the East package. Just call the toll-free number on your screen 24/7 and we'll send you Bob's 3 books and the 2 bonus DVDs with free shipping included. As always, you can also visit our website and online bookstore where you can place your order today. Thanks for supporting our ministry. Together, we are making a difference.
Well, Bob, as we come back, we just have a few minutes here left, but one of the things as well that I appreciated about your book was, again, in addition to the history and understanding the technology and the political ramifications, the geopolitics, the biblical idea, but you also, I kind of saw it as even very pastoral in a sense of, here you talk about the religious, our brothers and sisters in China. I mean, you give a history of their suffering and really kind of talking about the trend and the trajectory that they might have, even looking to the future. Talk a little bit about that as it relates to our brothers and sisters and how, as the church, we can help if we can.
Certainly the Christians in China are just multiplying at very significant numbers, likely because of the persecution. I worked with those that were behind the Iron Curtain during the Cold War, and it was a dangerous time. And yet the church really grew, home churches and the like. I think that much the same is happening in the totalitarian regime of communist China today, where we see multiplication amongst the Christian body is just phenomenal. In spite of the fact that you have to understand that a year ago, President Xi hosted a religion conference in Beijing. And basically he said he's not against religion, which is not true. But, if you're going to have religion, you have to have a religion in terms of what China says is proper. In other words, they rewrite the Bible. They make the clergy report to the communist minders. They have control over every aspect of where you worship and how you worship. And obviously, it's not going to be true Christianity. It's going to be a synicized version of the faith of Christ, but it's a total distortion. So we need to be aggressively engaged in supporting the Chinese the Chinese Christians, but recognize that it's going to be not only a prayerful fight, but one that we have to do in some cases very secretly because of the difficulty of communicating with them and encouraging them and providing for their spiritual encouragement.
Bob, appreciate your time today. And for those watching, here we are. Again, strongly recommend getting Bob's book, Kings of the East, because it provides so much information. And again, it ends on a realistic note of praying and encouraging our brothers and sisters in China who've been called to a very really just challenging situation there. And again, it doesn't look like it's going to get any better. But as Bob mentioned, we know that throughout church history, that when persecution comes, oftentimes God does amazing miracles and He protects and guides, but also He grows His church. So we appreciate you watching this week. Kings of the East by Bob Maginnis, a great book. Again, it's going to become a classic in my opinion. And so we also appreciate your prayers for us. We're continuing trying to get the word out and getting the gospel out for those that are watching to see that prophecy is being fulfilled. We're watching it unfold, and it's exciting to see. And Jesus tells us to always be watching. So thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.